Welcome to a journey into the intricate and often misunderstood landscape of male psychology. Today, we're going to peel back the layers, exploring truths that might surprise you, challenge your preconceptions, and perhaps even disturb you with their raw honesty. This isn't about judgment, it's about understanding, about shedding light on the hidden currents that shape men's inner worlds, their relationships, and their very sense of self. Prepare to delve deep into the silent struggles, unspoken fears, and profound complexities that often define the male experience. What you're about to hear might just change the way you see the men in your life, and perhaps even yourself. 1. Men often compare themselves to past partners. It's a silent, almost involuntary process, a psychological echo that reverberates long after a relationship has ended. Men, perhaps more than they consciously admit, frequently find themselves in the subtle, often subconscious act of comparing their current partners to those who came before. This isn't necessarily a sign of discontent or a lack of appreciation for the present, but rather a deeply ingrained mechanism stemming from a complex interplay of memory, self-assessment, and the human desire for understanding and optimization. The past isn't merely a collection of memories, it's a living archive, a benchmark against which new experiences are often measured, not always fairly, and certainly not always consciously. This comparison isn't always about finding fault. It can be about seeking patterns, understanding growth, or even just processing their own emotional landscape. Consider the intricate tapestry of a man's romantic history. Each relationship leaves an indelible mark, shaping his expectations, defining his preferences, and even altering his emotional responses. When a new person enters his life, his brain, in its relentless pursuit of making sense of the world, naturally references these past experiences. It's like having a mental Rolodex of emotional data points. He might compare communication styles, the way conflicts are resolved, the specific nuances of affection, or even the subtle ways in which different partners have challenged or supported his ambitions. This isn't about actively wishing for a past love to return, but rather an internal dialogue that seeks to contextualize the present. He might find himself thinking, "My ex used to react this way," or "This situation reminds me of how things were handled before." These thoughts are often fleeting, unbidden, and quickly dismissed, yet they represent a genuine psychological process. The disturbing aspect here lies in its often unspoken nature. Men rarely vocalize these comparisons, understanding instinctively that such an admission would be deeply hurtful and counterproductive to a healthy relationship. This silence creates an internal pressure, a private world of evaluation that can feel isolating. He might wrestle with these comparisons internally, feeling guilty for even having them, especially if his current partner is wonderful and he genuinely loves them. This internal conflict can manifest as a subtle detachment, a moment of hesitation, or a temporary withdrawal as he processes these unbidden thoughts. The comparison isn't necessarily about finding a better partner, but about evaluating the fit of the current relationship within the broader narrative of his life and romantic evolution. He might be comparing how he feels about himself in this relationship versus a past one, or how certain needs are met or unmet. Furthermore, this comparison can be a form of self-assessment. By comparing his current relationship dynamics to previous ones, a man might be subconsciously evaluating his own growth, his own patterns, and his own contributions to the relationship. He might ask himself if he's making the same mistakes, if he's learned from past errors, or if he's truly showing up as the man he wants to be. It's a way of taking stock, of ensuring that he's not repeating old cycles or falling into familiar traps. This introspective comparison can be a powerful, albeit often painful, tool for personal development. However, it can also lead to unfair judgments of his current partner if he projects the positive attributes of a past relationship onto an idealized version, or if he unfairly attributes past negative experiences to the present. The influence of societal narratives also plays a role. Men are often implicitly and sometimes explicitly encouraged to learn from their past relationships, to grow, and to find the right one. This societal pressure inadvertently fuels the comparative process. He's not just experiencing a relationship, he's evaluating it against a perceived ideal, an ideal often constructed from the fragments of past experiences and societal expectations. This can lead to a constant, low-level evaluation, a feeling that he's always testing the waters, even when he's deeply committed. The disturbing truth is that this internal comparison can create a subtle barrier, a slight emotional distance, even in the most loving partnerships, as he navigates the complex interplay between memory, present reality, and future hopes, all filtered through the lens of what has been before. It's a testament to the enduring power of history in shaping our present emotional landscapes. 2. Men can be emotionally unavailable due to childhood experiences. The concept of emotional unavailability in men is often discussed, sometimes with frustration, sometimes with resignation, but rarely with the depth of understanding it truly demands. Beneath the surface of a man who struggles to connect, to express, or to commit emotionally, there often lies a deeply etched blueprint formed during his earliest and most formative years, childhood experiences. These formative moments, particularly those involving early attachment figures, can profoundly shape a man's capacity for emotional intimacy, often creating barriers that he himself may not fully understand or know how to dismantle. It's a silent wound, a protective mechanism that, while serving a purpose in the past, can become a significant impediment to healthy, fulfilling relationships in adulthood. Consider a child growing up in an environment where emotions were not openly expressed or validated. Perhaps his parents were stoic, reserved, or even dismissive of his feelings. "Boys don't cry," "toughen up," "don't be so sensitive." These are phrases that, while seemingly innocent, can inflict deep psychological damage over time. They teach a young boy that expressing vulnerability is a weakness, that emotions are to be suppressed, hidden, or even shamed. He learns to internalize his feelings, to build walls around his inner world as a means of self-preservation. This early conditioning creates a powerful neural pathway. Emotional expression equals pain or rejection. As he matures, this learned behavior becomes deeply ingrained, an automatic response to emotional stimuli. When an adult relationship demands openness and vulnerability, he finds himself hitting an invisible wall, a deeply programmed resistance to what feels inherently unsafe. Moreover, a lack of consistent emotional attunement from primary caregivers can lead to insecure attachment styles. If a child's emotional needs were inconsistently met, if he experienced neglect, or if his caregivers were emotionally volatile, he might develop an anxious avoidant or dismissive avoidant attachment style. The dismissive avoidant style, in particular, is a strong precursor to emotional unavailability. Such individuals learn to become fiercely independent, to suppress their need for intimacy, and to view emotional closeness as a threat to their autonomy. They develop a self-sufficient facade, believing they don't need others, when in reality their deep-seated fear of rejection or engulfment drives this detachment. The disturbing truth is that this isn't a conscious choice to be distant. It's a deeply ingrained defense mechanism, a survival strategy learned in childhood that continues to operate on an unconscious level. Traumatic childhood experiences, such as abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual, abandonment, or witnessing severe marital conflict, can also profoundly impact a man's emotional landscape. Trauma creates a profound sense of distrust in the world and in others. For a child who has experienced such pain, emotional connection becomes synonymous with danger. He learns to dissociate from his feelings as a coping mechanism, to numb himself to pain, and to avoid situations that might trigger those traumatic memories. In adulthood, when a partner seeks emotional depth, it can unconsciously trigger these old wounds, leading him to shut down, withdraw, or even flee the relationship. The emotional unavailability is not a lack of caring, but a desperate, often unconscious, attempt to protect himself from perceived harm, a reenactment of childhood survival strategies in an adult context. The societal expectation for men to be strong, stoic, and self-reliant further exacerbates these childhood wounds. From a young age, boys are often discouraged from showing feminine emotions like sadness or fear, reinforcing the learned behavior of suppression. This cultural narrative merges with personal history, creating a formidable barrier to emotional expression. A man might genuinely want to be more emotionally available, but he lacks the internal tools, the emotional vocabulary, and the learned safety to do so. He might feel a deep sense of shame or inadequacy when he struggles to connect, leading to further withdrawal. The disturbing implication is that many men are walking through life with unhealed childhood wounds, silently struggling to navigate the complexities of adult relationships, not because they don't care, but because their very capacity for emotional intimacy has been shaped and constrained by experiences far beyond their control, creating a profound, often invisible chasm between their desires and their emotional reality. 3. Men fear being not enough. This fear, deeply rooted and often unspoken, acts as a pervasive undercurrent in many men's lives, silently shaping their decisions, driving their ambitions, and influencing their relationships. The fear of being not enough is not merely about lacking specific skills or attributes. It's a fundamental existential dread, a profound anxiety that they will fail to meet the expectations placed upon them, both by society and by themselves. It's a fear of failing to measure up, of being found wanting, of ultimately being deemed unworthy of love, respect, or success. This pervasive anxiety can be profoundly disturbing because it often operates beneath the surface, driving behaviors that appear confident or even aggressive, while concealing a deep well of insecurity. From a young age, boys are bombarded with messages about what it means to be a man. These messages often emphasize strength, competence, provision, protection, and stoicism. They are told, explicitly or implicitly, that their worth is tied to their ability to achieve, to perform, to succeed, and to provide. The expectation to be a provider, a protector, and a problem solver is deeply ingrained. If a man perceives himself as failing in any of these roles, financially, professionally, physically, or even emotionally within a relationship, the fear of not enough can surge to the forefront. He might feel he's not earning enough, not strong enough, not smart enough, not emotionally resilient enough, or not capable enough to handle life's challenges. This isn't just a fleeting doubt. It can be a persistent, gnawing sensation that undermines his self-worth. The disturbing aspect of this fear is how it can manifest in relationships. A man's fear of not enough can make him incredibly sensitive to criticism, particularly when it touches upon his perceived areas of inadequacy. If he feels he's not providing enough for his family, a comment about finances, however innocent, can trigger a profound sense of shame and failure. If he fears he's not emotionally available enough, a partner's plea for deeper connection can be interpreted not as a request, but an accusation, reinforcing his deepest insecurity. This fear can lead to defensiveness, withdrawal, or even anger, as he attempts to protect his fragile ego from what feels like an existential threat. He might push people away, not because he doesn't care, but because he fears that if they get too close, they will inevitably discover his perceived inadequacies and reject him. This fear also drives a relentless pursuit of external validation. Men might overwork, take on too many responsibilities, or strive for perfection in various areas of their lives, not solely for personal fulfillment, but as a desperate attempt to prove their worth, to gather evidence that they are enough. Each achievement, each success, offers a temporary reprieve from the gnawing anxiety, but the fear rarely fully dissipates. It's a treadmill of performance where the goalpost constantly shifts and true internal peace remains elusive. This can lead to burnout, stress, and a chronic sense of dissatisfaction, as he constantly feels compelled to do more, be more, achieve more, simply to quiet the internal voice that whispers, "You're not enough." Furthermore, the fear of not enough can prevent men from seeking help or admitting vulnerability. To admit weakness, to confess struggle, or to ask for assistance can feel like a direct confirmation of their deepest fear. This can lead to silent suffering as men grapple with mental health issues, relationship problems, or professional setbacks in isolation, rather than risking the perceived humiliation of exposing their perceived inadequacies. The societal pressure to be self-sufficient and strong reinforces this reluctance, creating a vicious cycle where the fear prevents the very actions that could alleviate it. The disturbing truth is that this pervasive fear often condemns men to a life of quiet striving, internal doubt, and a constant battle against an invisible enemy, the nagging suspicion that they simply don't measure up, a suspicion that deeply impacts their ability to form authentic connections and experience genuine self-acceptance. 4. Men fall harder when they believe love is rare for them. There's a peculiar intensity that can define a man's emotional investment when he perceives love, particularly genuine, deep, and reciprocated love, as a rare commodity in his life. This isn't just about appreciation, it's about a profound sense of gratitude, a heightened vulnerability, and an almost desperate clinging to a connection that feels both precious and precarious. When a man has experienced a history of rejection, emotional drought, or a series of unfulfilling relationships, the sudden arrival of true affection can feel like discovering an oasis in a desert. This belief that love is rare for him isn't necessarily a conscious thought, but rather an underlying emotional framework that profoundly amplifies the impact of a loving relationship, causing him to fall with an intensity that can be both beautiful and, at times, unsettling in its depth. Consider a man who has struggled with self-esteem, perhaps feeling overlooked or misunderstood for much of his life. Or a man who has endured a string of superficial connections, never quite finding someone who truly sees and accepts him. When such a man finally encounters a partner who offers genuine intimacy, unconditional acceptance, and a safe space for vulnerability, the experience can be overwhelming. It's not just a new relationship, it's a validation, a healing balm for old wounds. He might project onto this partner a profound significance, seeing them not just as a lover, but as a savior, a testament to his own worth, or the answer to a long-held yearning. This heightened sense of gratitude and relief can lead him to invest all of himself, to fall with an almost singular focus, because he believes this opportunity might not come again. The disturbing aspect lies in the potential for this intensity to create an imbalance or an unhealthy dynamic. While deep love is desirable, when it's driven by a belief in its rarity, it can sometimes border on desperation or an almost obsessive devotion. He might become overly eager to please, fearful of making mistakes, or excessively anxious about losing the relationship because the stakes feel incredibly high. The idea of returning to a state of emotional scarcity can be terrifying, leading him to overlook red flags, tolerate unhealthy behaviors, or suppress his own needs in an effort to preserve the precious connection. This isn't necessarily manipulative behavior from the partner. It's an internal psychological process within the man where the perceived rarity of love elevates its value to an almost unsustainable degree. Furthermore, this phenomenon can be linked to the concept of scarcity mindset. When something is perceived as scarce, its perceived value skyrockets. For a man who believes love is rare for him, the love he receives becomes immensely valuable, and he will go to extraordinary lengths to protect and nurture it. This can manifest as an intense loyalty, a fierce protectiveness, and an unwavering commitment. He might become incredibly attentive, pouring all his emotional energy into the relationship, because he sees it as his one chance, his singular opportunity for true happiness and connection. This depth of commitment, while admirable, can also be fragile. If the relationship faces challenges, or if he perceives a threat to its existence, his reaction can be disproportionately intense, driven by the fear of losing something he believes is irreplaceable. The underlying psychological mechanism is often a combination of unmet needs, past emotional deprivation, and a deep-seated longing for connection. When these needs are finally met, the floodgates can open, leading to an almost overwhelming surge of emotion and attachment. This isn't to say that all men who fall hard are insecure, or that their love is inherently unhealthy. Rather, it highlights a profound psychological truth. The context and history of a man's emotional life significantly influences the way he experiences and expresses love. For those who have navigated a landscape of emotional scarcity, the arrival of genuine love is not just a pleasant experience. It's a transformative, almost miraculous event that elicits a response of profound, often overwhelming intensity, causing them to fall deeper and commit more fiercely than they might otherwise, driven by the disturbing underlying belief that this precious gift might never come again. 5. Men treat love as responsibility. The perception of love as a responsibility, rather than solely an emotion or a feeling, is a deeply ingrained psychological truth for many men. It's not just about the butterflies or the passionate declarations. For a significant number of men, love translates into a tangible set of duties, obligations, and commitments that they feel compelled to uphold. This perspective is shaped by a complex interplay of societal expectations, evolutionary pressures, and personal experiences, all of which contribute to a mindset where love is synonymous with action, provision, and unwavering dedication. From a young age, men are often taught, implicitly and explicitly, that their worth and their role in relationships are tied to their ability to provide and protect. Historically and culturally, the male role has been that of the provider, the problem solver, the steady anchor. This narrative deeply influences how men conceptualize love. For many, expressing love isn't just about saying, "I love you." It's about making sure their partner is safe, financially secure, and well cared for. It's about fixing things when they break, about working hard to maintain a comfortable home, about offering practical solutions to problems, and about being a reliable presence. These actions are, in their minds, direct manifestations of their love and commitment. They might struggle to articulate their feelings verbally, but their actions speak volumes in their own internal language. The disturbing disconnect often arises when these actions, which he perceives as profound demonstrations of love, are not recognized or appreciated as such by his partner, who might be seeking more verbal affirmation or emotional presence. This can lead to frustration and confusion on both sides, as his love language is one of responsibility, while his partner's might be different. This sense of responsibility also extends to the emotional well-being of his partner. Many men feel a deep obligation to protect their loved ones from pain or distress. If his partner is upset, his immediate instinct might be to fix the problem, to offer solutions, or to distract them from their sadness, rather than simply sitting with their emotions. This isn't a lack of empathy, it's a manifestation of his love as responsibility, a responsibility to alleviate suffering and restore peace. He feels responsible for their happiness, and if they are unhappy, he might interpret it as a personal failure, as if he is not adequately fulfilling his loving duties. This can lead to him internalizing his partner's problems, carrying them as a heavy burden, even if they are not his to solve. The burden of this responsibility can be immense and often goes unacknowledged. Men who treat love as responsibility may feel a constant pressure to perform, to never falter, and to always be capable. They might suppress their own needs, their own vulnerabilities, and their own desires for support because they perceive their primary role as giving and providing. To admit weakness or to ask for help could feel like failing in their loving duties. This silent carrying of responsibility can lead to stress, burnout, and a profound sense of isolation. The disturbing truth is that while this approach to love is born of genuine care and commitment, it can inadvertently create emotional distance, as the man focuses on the external manifestations of love rather than the internal, vulnerable sharing that fosters deep intimacy, leaving him feeling unappreciated for his efforts and his partner feeling emotionally unfulfilled, caught in a cycle of unspoken expectations and unacknowledged burdens. 6. Men lie about feelings to avoid hurting others. The act of lying about one's true feelings is often viewed with suspicion, equated with deception or a lack of integrity. However, for many men, this behavior stems not from malice, but from a deeply ingrained, often painful, desire to protect others from hurt. It's a complex psychological maneuver, a silent sacrifice of their own emotional truth in an attempt to maintain peace, prevent conflict, or spare a loved one from distress. This tendency, while seemingly noble in its intent, carries a profound and disturbing cost: the suppression of authentic self-expression, the creation of emotional distance, and the potential for deep-seated resentment to fester beneath the surface. Consider a man who is contemplating ending a relationship. He might genuinely feel that the relationship is not working, that his feelings have changed, or that he needs to move on. Yet, the thought of articulating these truths directly, knowing the pain it will inflict on his partner, can be almost unbearable. Instead of a blunt, honest declaration, he might offer vague excuses, deflect blame, or even subtly distance himself without explicit communication. He might say, "It's not you, it's me," or "I just need some space," even if the reality is more pointed. This isn't a cowardice in the traditional sense. It's a profound aversion to being the direct cause of another person's suffering, particularly someone he once loved, or still cares for in a platonic sense. He might believe that a gentle lie, or a softened truth, is less painful than the brutal honesty of his true feelings. This tendency is often rooted in childhood conditioning. Many boys are taught to be nice, to avoid making waves, and to prioritize harmony. They learn that their emotions, especially negative ones, can be disruptive or even dangerous. They might have witnessed conflict resulting from direct emotional expression and internalize the idea that it's safer to conceal uncomfortable truths. Furthermore, men are often conditioned to be problem solvers and protectors. If expressing their true feelings will create a problem or cause pain, they might see it as failing in their protective role. Therefore, a lie of omission or a softened truth becomes a perceived act of protection, a way to mitigate potential damage. The disturbing aspect of this behavior lies in its long-term consequences. While the immediate intention is to prevent pain, the act of consistently lying about one's feelings creates a profound internal dissonance. The man is living a bifurcated emotional life, one where his true feelings reside, and another where a carefully constructed narrative is presented to the world. This can lead to a sense of inauthenticity, a feeling of being perpetually misunderstood, and a deep emotional isolation. He might suppress his own unhappiness, his own discontent, or his own desires for support for so long that he loses touch with them entirely. The resentment that builds from constantly sacrificing his truth for others can slowly erode his well-being and his capacity for genuine connection. Moreover, while the lie might spare immediate pain, it often prolongs and intensifies suffering in the long run. The partner, operating on false pretenses, cannot truly understand or address the underlying issues. The relationship continues on a foundation of unspoken truths, leading to confusion, distrust, and ultimately a more painful rupture when the truth eventually surfaces, as it often does. The man, in his attempt to be kind, inadvertently creates a deeper wound. This pattern can extend beyond romantic relationships, impacting friendships, family dynamics, and professional interactions. The disturbing truth is that a man's desire to protect others from his uncomfortable emotions, while born of a genuine compassionate impulse, often results in a silent burden for himself and a delayed, more profound hurt for those he cares about, trapping him in a cycle of emotional suppression and inauthenticity. 7. Men rarely admit when they feel lonely in relationships. The paradox of feeling profoundly lonely while actively being in a relationship is a deeply unsettling and often unacknowledged reality for many men. It's a silent, internal struggle, a profound sense of isolation that they rarely, if ever, articulate to their partners or even to themselves. This isn't about being physically alone. It's about an emotional chasm, a perceived lack of genuine connection, understanding, or intimacy despite the presence of another person. The disturbing truth is that this loneliness can fester, eroding the foundation of the relationship from within, precisely because it remains unspoken and unaddressed, hidden behind a facade of stoicism or contentment. Consider a man who is in a long-term partnership. On the surface, everything might appear stable: shared responsibilities, routines, and perhaps even affection. Yet beneath this veneer, he might experience a profound sense of emotional detachment. He might feel unheard, misunderstood, or that his deeper emotional needs are not being met. Perhaps his partner is preoccupied, or their communication style doesn't allow for the kind of vulnerable sharing he unconsciously craves. He might feel that he's constantly giving, supporting, and solving problems, but rarely receiving the same depth of emotional reciprocity. This isn't necessarily a fault of the partner. It can be a mismatch in emotional languages, a failure to truly see each other, or a consequence of societal conditioning that discourages men from expressing such needs. The primary reason men rarely admit to this loneliness stems from a potent combination of societal expectations and personal vulnerability. From a young age, boys are taught to be strong, self-reliant, and resilient. Admitting to loneliness, especially within a relationship, can feel like an admission of weakness, a failure to be man enough. It can be perceived as an accusation against his partner, implying they are not doing enough, which he might fear will lead to conflict or rejection. He might also worry that expressing such a vulnerable feeling will make him seem needy, unattractive, or a burden. The shame associated with admitting emotional neediness is a powerful deterrent, forcing him to internalize these feelings. Furthermore, men often struggle with the vocabulary and the emotional tools to articulate such complex feelings. They might not even fully understand why they feel lonely, only that an emptiness persists. Instead of saying, "I feel disconnected from you," or "I miss our intimacy," they might withdraw, become irritable, or seek solace in external activities, like work, hobbies, or even other relationships, platonic or otherwise. These behaviors are often misread by partners as disinterest, anger, or a lack of love, further exacerbating the man's sense of isolation. His attempts to cope with loneliness inadvertently create more distance, reinforcing his belief that his feelings are better left unsaid. The disturbing aspect is that this unspoken loneliness can be a slow poison for a relationship. It leads to a gradual emotional erosion, where both partners might feel something is amiss, but the core issue remains unaddressed. The man, silently suffering, becomes more distant, less engaged, and potentially more prone to seeking superficial connections elsewhere, not necessarily out of malicious intent, but out of a desperate, unconscious longing to fill the void. He might crave reassurance and connection, but is paralyzed by the fear of asking for it directly. This hidden loneliness can lead to a profound sense of despair, a feeling of being utterly alone, even when sharing a bed or a life with someone. It's a testament to the powerful, often destructive, impact of emotional suppression and the societal pressure that prevents men from articulating their deepest, most vulnerable needs, leaving them isolated in the very relationships meant to provide connection and intimacy. 8. Men often love their partners, but hate relationship pressure. The dichotomy between genuinely loving a partner and simultaneously resenting the perceived pressures of the relationship is a nuanced and often confusing psychological reality for many men. It's not a contradiction of love, but rather a tension between deep affection and a profound aversion to the expectations, demands, and perceived loss of autonomy that can accompany a committed partnership. This isn't about wanting to escape the partner, it's about wanting to escape the framework of the relationship itself, or at least certain aspects of it that feel constricting. The disturbing truth is that this internal conflict can lead to withdrawal, irritability, and a subtle emotional distancing, even when the love for the partner remains strong and unwavering, creating a perplexing dynamic for both individuals involved. Consider a man who deeply cares for his partner, cherishes their shared life, and values their connection. Yet, he might feel an underlying sense of dread when faced with discussions about future plans, expectations for emotional availability, or demands on his time and energy. He might love the person, but feel suffocated by the rules of the relationship, whether explicit or implicit. This pressure can manifest in various forms: the pressure to always be emotionally present, to fulfill specific roles, to compromise on personal interests, to adhere to routines, or to constantly justify his actions and choices. For him, these aren't necessarily unreasonable requests, but they can feel like an assault on his sense of self and his individual freedom, triggering a deep-seated resistance. This aversion to relationship pressure often stems from a combination of factors. Men are frequently socialized to value independence, autonomy, and a sense of personal agency. The idea of being tied down or having his choices dictated can feel profoundly threatening to his identity. This isn't necessarily a sign of immaturity or a lack of commitment. It's a deeply ingrained psychological need to maintain a sense of individual space and control over his own life. When a relationship begins to feel like a series of obligations, demands, or a constant negotiation of his personal boundaries, the love he feels can become entangled with a growing sense of resentment towards the perceived constraints. He might feel that the relationship is asking him to be someone he's not, or to sacrifice too much of himself. The disturbing aspect is how this internal conflict often goes uncommunicated. A man might struggle to articulate his feelings, fearing that expressing his aversion to pressure will be misinterpreted as a lack of love or a desire to leave the relationship. He might worry that his partner will feel hurt or rejected if he admits that he feels constrained. Consequently, he internalizes this tension, leading to passive-aggressive behaviors, subtle forms of rebellion, or emotional withdrawal. He might become less engaged, more irritable, or seek solace in activities that allow him to reclaim a sense of personal freedom, even if it means creating distance from his partner. This isn't because he doesn't love them, it's because he's trying to manage the overwhelming feeling of being pressured or losing himself within the relationship. Moreover, the societal narrative often portrays committed relationships as a merger of two lives, a seamless integration. While many aspects of this are beautiful, for some men, this ideal can feel like a threat to their individuality. They might crave connection and intimacy, but simultaneously fear losing their distinct identity within the partnership. This struggle is often unseen, as men are less likely to openly discuss feelings of being overwhelmed by relationship demands. The disturbing truth is that a man can be deeply devoted to his partner, yet silently battle against the perceived chains of the relationship itself, leading to internal conflict, external behaviors that confuse and hurt, and a profound sense of being misunderstood, all while trying to reconcile his love with his innate need for autonomy and personal space. 9. Men break trust silently when they feel unvalued. Trust, the bedrock of any meaningful relationship, can erode in ways that are often imperceptible until the damage is severe. For men, this erosion frequently begins not with a dramatic betrayal, but with a silent internal fracturing that occurs when they consistently feel unvalued, unappreciated, or taken for granted. It's a psychological process where the unspoken perception of worthlessness slowly chips away at their willingness to be vulnerable, to invest emotionally, and to believe in the safety and reciprocity of the relationship. The disturbing truth is that this breach of trust is often invisible, building up over time until it manifests as emotional distance, a lack of engagement, or a sudden, seemingly inexplicable withdrawal, leaving partners bewildered by a shift they never saw coming. Consider a man who consistently puts effort into the relationship, whether it's through providing, problem-solving, emotional support, or simply showing up. If these efforts are routinely met with indifference, criticism, or are simply overlooked, a subtle but profound shift begins to occur within him. He might perceive his contributions as being dismissed, his sacrifices as unacknowledged, or his very presence as unimportant. This isn't necessarily about needing constant praise, it's about needing to feel that his efforts are seen and mattered, that he is a valued contributor to the shared life. When this validation is absent, a man's internal trust in the relationship's equity and his own significance within it starts to falter. The silent nature of this trust breaking is key. Men are often less likely to vocalize their feelings of being unvalued. Admitting such a vulnerability can feel like an admission of weakness or an accusation against their partner, which they might fear will lead to conflict or further rejection. Instead, they internalize these feelings. Each instance of feeling unappreciated acts like a small crack in the foundation of trust. He might stop sharing as openly, become less enthusiastic about joint activities, or withdraw emotionally. His actions might become more transactional, less driven by genuine emotional investment. He's not actively trying to deceive or betray, he's simply protecting himself from further perceived devaluation by gradually disengaging his emotional core from the relationship. This psychological process is often rooted in a man's deep-seated need to feel competent and valuable. Societal conditioning often links male worth to their contributions and their ability to solve problems and provide. When these contributions are not acknowledged or are devalued, it strikes at the core of his self-esteem and his sense of purpose within the relationship. This isn't about seeking ego boosts, it's about the fundamental human need to feel significant and respected by those he loves. The disturbing implication is that by the time a partner notices the emotional distance or the shift in his behavior, the internal breach of trust might already be extensive. He might have reached a point where he no longer feels safe being vulnerable, no longer believes his efforts will be recognized, and no longer trusts in the reciprocal nature of the relationship. He might continue to go through the motions, fulfilling his duties, but his heart and his true emotional investment will have significantly receded. This silent breaking of trust can be far more insidious than an overt betrayal because it erodes the relationship gradually, often without any clear warning signs that can be easily identified or addressed. It leaves a partner wondering what went wrong, while the man himself has been silently struggling with a profound sense of being unvalued, leading to a quiet, internal divorce long before any official separation. 10. Men develop attachment faster after emotional droughts. The human need for connection is profound, and for men who have experienced prolonged periods of emotional scarcity, an emotional drought, the sudden emergence of genuine intimacy can trigger a remarkably rapid and intense attachment. This isn't just about finding a new partner, it's about a deep, often unconscious surge of relief and gratitude that can cause them to latch onto the connection with a speed and ferocity that might surprise both themselves and their new partners. The disturbing aspect is that while this rapid attachment can feel incredibly powerful and affirming, it can also be driven by a desperate need to fill a void, potentially leading to an idealized view of the partner and a fragility that underlies the intense connection. Consider a man who has navigated a period of profound loneliness, perhaps after a difficult breakup, a series of unfulfilling casual encounters, or simply a prolonged phase where deep emotional connection felt elusive. During this drought, his innate human need for intimacy, understanding, and emotional reciprocity remains unmet, accumulating like a psychological debt. When a person finally enters his life who offers genuine warmth, vulnerability, and a sense of belonging, the emotional floodgates can open. This isn't merely attraction, it's a powerful psychological response to having a fundamental human need finally addressed. The partner becomes, in a sense, the answer to a deep-seated yearning, and the attachment forms with remarkable speed. This rapid attachment is often fueled by an overwhelming sense of relief. The emotional drought has been a period of deprivation, and the new connection feels like sustenance. He might perceive this new partner as uniquely special, almost miraculous, because they have alleviated a profound internal pain. This can lead to an idealization of the partner, where minor flaws are overlooked and their positive attributes are magnified. He might invest himself completely and quickly, pouring all his pent-up emotional energy into the relationship, eager to make up for lost time and to secure this newfound source of emotional nourishment. The speed of this attachment can sometimes be disorienting, even for the man himself, as he finds himself feeling deeply connected in a relatively short period. The disturbing aspect lies in the potential fragility and underlying motivations of this rapid attachment. While genuine love can certainly blossom quickly, when driven by an emotional drought, the attachment can be less about truly knowing and loving the person for who they are, and more about the relief they provide from emotional pain. This can lead to a dependence on the partner to fill an internal void, rather than a healthy, interdependent connection. If the initial intensity of the relationship wanes, or if the partner fails to meet the idealized expectations, the man can experience profound disappointment, as the foundational need that drove the attachment reemerges. The attachment, while strong, can be built on the urgent need for relief rather than a fully developed understanding and acceptance of the other person. Furthermore, this rapid attachment can make a man incredibly vulnerable to manipulation or to overlooking unhealthy dynamics. Desperate to maintain the newfound connection, he might tolerate behaviors he wouldn't otherwise, or suppress his own needs and boundaries. The fear of returning to the emotional drought can be a powerful motivator, leading him to cling to the relationship even if it's not truly serving his long-term well-being. The disturbing truth is that a man's capacity for rapid, intense attachment after a period of emotional scarcity, while born of a deep human need for connection, can inadvertently lead to an emotional dependency and an idealized vision that, if unchecked, can pave the way for future heartbreak or an unhealthy relationship dynamic, as the urgent need for connection sometimes overrides the careful discernment required for true, lasting intimacy. 11. Men drift away when they feel micromanaged. The human spirit, regardless of gender, yearns for a sense of autonomy and respect. For men, this yearning is often particularly acute, and when they perceive themselves as being micromanaged within a relationship, it can trigger a powerful and often unconscious urge to withdraw. This isn't necessarily about a malicious intent to distance themselves. It's a psychological defense mechanism, a quiet rebellion against a perceived loss of control and a feeling of being constantly scrutinized or distrusted. The disturbing truth is that this drifting away is often subtle, gradual, and driven by a man's deep-seated need for respect and independence, leaving partners confused and relationships slowly eroding without clear communication about the underlying cause. Consider a man who feels his partner is constantly questioning his decisions, dictating his actions, or scrutinizing his whereabouts. This might manifest as incessant texts asking for his location, detailed inquiries about his day, instructions on how to perform tasks he believes he's capable of, or a pervasive sense that his judgment is not trusted. While a partner might view these actions as expressions of care, concern, or a desire for closeness, the man can interpret them as a lack of faith in his abilities, a challenge to his competence, or an infringement on his personal freedom. He might feel treated like a child rather than an equal partner, and this feeling strikes at the core of his adult identity and self-respect. The psychological root of this reaction lies in the male emphasis on competence and autonomy. From a young age, men are often conditioned to value self-sufficiency, problem-solving, and the ability to navigate their own path. When a partner steps into a micromanaging role, it can feel like a direct assault on these core values. It implies, however unintentionally, that he is not capable, not trustworthy, or not intelligent enough to manage his own life or contribute effectively to the relationship. This perception of being controlled rather than collaborated with can be deeply unsettling and trigger a powerful need to reassert his independence. The disturbing aspect is how this resistance to micromanagement often manifests as passive withdrawal rather than direct confrontation. Men are frequently reluctant to express feelings of being controlled, as it can feel like complaining or being ungrateful, or might be interpreted as a sign of not caring. Instead of saying, "I feel like you don't trust me," or "I need more space to make my own decisions," he might simply start to create that space. He might become less communicative, spend more time alone or with friends, delay responding to messages, or become less engaged in shared activities. He's not consciously trying to hurt his partner. He's unconsciously attempting to reclaim his autonomy and reestablish his boundaries in the face of what feels like an encroaching control. This gradual drifting can be incredibly damaging to a relationship. The partner, seeing the withdrawal, might intensify their attempts to connect or manage the situation, inadvertently exacerbating the man's feeling of being micromanaged, creating a vicious cycle. The man, meanwhile, becomes more and more emotionally distant, as the relationship, instead of being a source of connection and support, begins to feel like a cage. The disturbing truth is that a man's deep-seated need for respect and autonomy, when threatened by perceived micromanagement, can lead to a silent, slow disengagement where his emotional presence gradually recedes, leaving a void that is difficult to understand or repair, precisely because the underlying cause remains unarticulated and unaddressed. 12. Men crave certainty in love. In a world filled with ambiguity and constant change, the human mind instinctively seeks patterns, predictability, and a sense of security. For men, this innate desire for certainty often extends deeply into the realm of romantic relationships, manifesting as a profound craving for clarity, stability, and a clear understanding of where they stand. This isn't about a lack of passion or a fear of the unknown. It's a fundamental psychological need to feel grounded and secure in their emotional landscape. The disturbing aspect is how this craving for certainty can make men incredibly sensitive to mixed signals, ambiguity, or perceived instability, potentially leading to anxiety, withdrawal, or an inability to fully invest when the emotional ground feels shaky. Consider a man navigating the early stages of a relationship. While he might enjoy the excitement and novelty, an underlying part of him is often seeking signals of commitment, mutual interest, and a clear trajectory. If he receives inconsistent messages, one day affectionate and engaged, the next distant and vague, it can create immense internal stress. He might spend disproportionate amounts of time trying to figure out where things stand, analyzing every text, every glance, every interaction for clues. This isn't about being overly analytical. It's about his inherent drive to establish a predictable framework within which he can safely invest his emotions. Ambiguity, for him, can feel like a threat to his emotional well-being, a signal of potential instability or eventual pain. This craving for certainty is often rooted in a combination of factors. Men are frequently conditioned to be problem solvers and planners. They are encouraged to have a clear vision, to set goals, and to execute. When this mindset is applied to relationships, a lack of clear direction or understanding can feel profoundly unsettling. Furthermore, the vulnerability inherent in love makes men particularly sensitive to potential emotional risks. If he is to open his heart and invest his energy, he needs to feel a reasonable degree of assurance that his efforts are reciprocated and that the relationship has a stable future. Without this certainty, the emotional risk feels too high, leading to hesitation or self-protection. The disturbing aspect is how this craving for certainty can manifest in ways that are often misunderstood. A man who is struggling with ambiguity might appear distant, aloof, or even disinterested, when in reality he's internally wrestling with anxiety and a need for clarity. He might pull back, not because he doesn't care, but because he's protecting himself from the potential pain of an uncertain outcome. He might be waiting for a clear signal, a definitive declaration, or a consistent pattern of behavior before he fully commits his emotional resources. This hesitation can be misinterpreted by partners as a lack of interest, leading to a cycle of misunderstanding and further emotional distance. Moreover, this need for certainty can make men less tolerant of games or intentional ambiguity in dating. While some might find the chase exciting, many men, particularly those seeking a serious connection, find such tactics deeply frustrating and counterproductive. They want straightforward communication, clear intentions, and a sense that both parties are on the same page. The disturbing truth is that a man's deep-seated craving for certainty in love, while a natural human desire for security, can inadvertently create barriers to connection when relationships are characterized by ambiguity or inconsistent emotional signals, leading him to withdraw or become emotionally guarded, even when genuine potential for a loving and fulfilling partnership exists, simply because the emotional landscape feels too unstable to navigate with full commitment. 13. Men shut down when criticized during vulnerability. Vulnerability is a profound act of courage, an opening of the deepest parts of oneself to another. For men, who are often conditioned to suppress emotions and maintain a stoic facade, reaching a point of vulnerability is an especially significant step. When this rare and courageous act is met with criticism, judgment, or ridicule, the psychological impact can be devastating, leading to an immediate and profound shutdown. This isn't merely a temporary retreat, it's a deep emotional retraction, a reinforcement of the belief that vulnerability is unsafe, and a powerful deterrent against future attempts at emotional openness. The disturbing truth is that a single instance of criticism during a moment of vulnerability can effectively seal off a man's emotional world, making it incredibly difficult for him to ever open up again in the same way. Consider a man who, after years of holding back, finally decides to share a deep fear, a past trauma, or a profound insecurity with his partner. This might be a moment of immense emotional effort, a leap of faith. If his partner responds by minimizing his feelings, that's silly. Offering unsolicited advice, you just need to get over it. Or worse, using his vulnerability against him in a future argument, remember when you said you were afraid of X? The effect is immediate and profound. He doesn't just feel hurt, he feels violated, betrayed, and deeply ashamed. The emotional doors he tentatively opened slam shut, often with a resounding psychological clang. This reaction is rooted in the early conditioning many men receive. Boys are often taught that vulnerability is a weakness, an invitation for attack or ridicule. They learn to build emotional walls as a means of self-preservation. When they finally gather the courage to breach those walls and are met with criticism, it confirms their deepest fears and reinforces the learned behavior of suppression. The message received is clear: it is not safe to be emotionally open. This experience can be incredibly traumatic, as it validates the very fears that kept them guarded in the first place. The disturbing aspect is the long-term impact of such an experience. A man who has been criticized during vulnerability will likely retreat into himself, becoming even more guarded and emotionally distant. He might conclude that it's simply not worth the risk to open up, that the potential for pain outweighs any potential benefit of intimacy. This can lead to a profound emotional isolation, even within a loving relationship. He might continue to function, to be present physically, but his emotional core will remain locked away, inaccessible to his partner, and even at times to himself. He learns to suppress not just the expression of vulnerability, but the very feeling of it, as a protective mechanism. Furthermore, this shutdown isn't always a conscious decision. It can be an automatic, physiological response, a freeze, fight, or flight reaction triggered by emotional threat. His body and mind simply go into protective mode, making it incredibly difficult for him to access or articulate those vulnerable feelings again. The partner, unaware of the profound impact of their criticism, might interpret his subsequent withdrawal as a lack of caring or a sign of emotional unavailability, leading to a cycle of misunderstanding and growing distance. The disturbing truth is that the courage it takes for a man to be vulnerable is immense, and when that courage is met with anything less than gentle acceptance and validation, the resulting emotional shutdown can be a lasting and profound wound, effectively closing off a pathway to deep intimacy and leaving him trapped in a solitary emotional world. 15. Men fear emotional manipulation deeply. The concept of emotional manipulation is inherently unsettling, eroding trust and autonomy. For men, however, this fear often runs particularly deep, rooted in societal expectations, past experiences, and a distinct discomfort with perceived psychological games. It's not just about avoiding being controlled, it's a profound aversion to having their emotions twisted, their judgment clouded, or their sense of reality distorted by another person. The disturbing aspect is that this deep-seated fear can make men overly cautious, guarded, and even suspicious in relationships, potentially leading them to pull away from genuine emotional connection if they perceive even subtle hints of manipulative tactics, whether intended or not. Consider a man who has experienced a past relationship where his feelings were used against him, where he was guilt-tripped, gaslighted, or made to feel responsible for his partner's emotional states. This experience leaves an indelible scar, making him hyper-vigilant to similar patterns in future relationships. He might become acutely sensitive to passive-aggressive behaviors, emotional blackmail, or attempts to control his actions through emotional means. Even seemingly innocuous statements or behaviors, if they echo past manipulative patterns, can trigger a profound sense of alarm and defensiveness within him. This fear is often exacerbated by societal conditioning. Men are frequently taught to be logical, rational, and in control of their emotions. The idea of being played or emotionally controlled can feel like a profound challenge to their sense of competence and masculinity. They might perceive emotional manipulation as a form of psychological warfare, a threat to their autonomy that they are ill-equipped to handle, precisely because it operates outside the logical frameworks they are comfortable with. Furthermore, the stereotype of women being more emotional or scheming can, however unfairly, contribute to a heightened sense of caution in men when navigating complex emotional dynamics, making them wary of situations where emotions are used as leverage. The disturbing aspect is how this fear can manifest as a protective barrier, even against genuine emotional expression. If a partner expresses strong emotions, particularly sadness or anger, a man might unconsciously interpret it as a potential precursor to manipulation. He might become guarded, withdraw, or try to rationalize away the emotions, not because he lacks empathy, but because he's trying to protect himself from what he perceives as a potential trap. He might pull back from vulnerable conversations, avoid discussing sensitive topics, or become emotionally distant to prevent any scenario where his feelings could be used against him. This isn't a lack of caring, it's a profound, often unconscious self-preservation mechanism. Moreover, the fear of emotional manipulation can lead to a man becoming overly analytical about emotional interactions, constantly scrutinizing motives and looking for hidden agendas. This hypervigilance can prevent him from fully relaxing into intimacy and trusting the authenticity of his partner's feelings. He might struggle to differentiate between genuine emotional expression and manipulative tactics, leading him to err on the side of caution and maintain an emotional distance. The disturbing truth is that a man's deep-seated fear of emotional manipulation, while born of a legitimate desire for safety and autonomy, can inadvertently create a profound barrier to genuine intimacy, causing him to become guarded and suspicious even in loving relationships, making him less likely to fully open his heart and more prone to withdrawing at the first hint of perceived emotional gamesmanship. 15. Men remember emotional insults for years. The human memory is a complex and selective archive, but for many men, emotional insults, particularly those that strike at their core sense of worth, competence, or masculinity, possess an uncanny longevity. These aren't just fleeting moments of hurt, they are deeply etched memories that can linger for years, sometimes decades, influencing future interactions, shaping self-perception, and silently poisoning relationships. The disturbing truth is that while men might appear to get over things quickly or dismiss hurtful words, these emotional wounds often fester beneath the surface, impacting their capacity for trust, vulnerability, and forgiveness long after the incident itself. Consider a man who was told by a past partner, "You'll never amount to anything," or "You're not a real man," or "You're just like your father." Such statements, particularly when delivered by someone they loved and trusted, don't just cause momentary pain, they resonate deeply, tapping into core fears of inadequacy, failure, or a perceived inability to meet societal or personal expectations. These insults become psychological anchors, replaying in his mind during moments of self-doubt, during arguments, or when faced with new challenges. He might outwardly dismiss the comment, but internally the words continue to sting, acting as a silent critic. This long-term retention of emotional insults is often linked to the male emphasis on respect, competence, and a stable sense of identity. An insult that undermines these pillars can feel like a profound personal attack. For men, who are often less adept at processing and articulating complex emotions, these insults can become stuck in their psychological landscape, unable to be fully processed or released. Instead of being discussed and resolved, they are internalized, forming a part of his emotional baggage. He might replay the scenario, not out of malice, but out of a desperate attempt to understand, to defend himself, or to prevent similar future hurts. The disturbing aspect lies in how these unhealed emotional wounds impact current and future relationships. A man who carries the memory of a past emotional insult might become hypersensitive to similar criticisms, even if they are unintentional. A seemingly innocuous comment from a current partner might trigger the memory of an old wound, causing him to react defensively, withdraw, or become irritable, often without his partner understanding the true source of his reaction. He might unconsciously project the negative attributes of the past onto the present, leading to distrust or a reluctance to be fully vulnerable. The memory of the insult creates a protective barrier, making him wary of opening himself up to potential future hurts. Furthermore, this lingering memory can impact his self-esteem and ambition. If he was told he was a failure, he might subconsciously shy away from opportunities that could lead to success, fearing a revalidation of that insult. If he was told he was unlovable, he might struggle to fully accept love when it's offered. The emotional insult becomes a prophecy he unconsciously strives to avoid, or, tragically, fulfills. The disturbing truth is that while men are often expected to be resilient and emotionally tough, emotional insults can leave deep and lasting scars, silently influencing their behavior, shaping their perceptions of themselves and others, and creating a persistent internal pain that can undermine trust and intimacy for years, proving that words, once spoken, can carry an astonishingly enduring and destructive power within the male psyche. 16. Men struggle to forgive themselves after hurting someone they love. The burden of guilt, particularly after inflicting pain upon someone deeply loved, is a profound and often isolating experience. For men, this struggle to forgive themselves can be particularly intense and prolonged, often manifesting as a silent, internal torment that they rarely articulate. It's not merely regret, it's a deep-seated sense of having violated their own moral code, of having failed in their role as a protector or a loving partner, and of having caused irreparable damage to a cherished connection. The disturbing truth is that while they might seek forgiveness from the injured party, the self-forgiveness often remains elusive, leading to prolonged self-reproach, emotional withdrawal, and a profound sense of unworthiness that can silently erode their well-being and their capacity for future happiness. Consider a man who has made a significant mistake in a relationship, perhaps an infidelity, a hurtful outburst, a failure to be present, or a betrayal of trust. While he might sincerely apologize and attempt to make amends, the internal monologue of self-blame can be relentless. He might replay the event endlessly in his mind, dissecting his actions, questioning his motives, and berating himself for his perceived failure. This isn't just about the immediate consequences, it's about the profound disappointment in himself, the realization that he has caused pain to someone he genuinely cares about, and the feeling that he has fallen short of the man he aspires to be. This internal anguish can be far more persistent and debilitating than any external criticism. This struggle for self-forgiveness is often rooted in male socialization. Men are frequently conditioned to be responsible, to be problem solvers, and to protect those they love. When they fail in these roles, especially by causing hurt, it can trigger a deep sense of shame and a feeling of profound personal failure. They might internalize the idea that a good man wouldn't do such a thing, leading to a harsh self-judgment. Furthermore, men often struggle to process and express complex emotions like guilt and shame. Instead of seeking support or talking through their feelings, they might internalize them, allowing the self-blame to fester in isolation. The disturbing aspect is how this inability to self-forgive can manifest. A man might become overly self-sacrificing, constantly trying to atone for his past actions, even long after the other person has offered forgiveness. He might deny himself happiness, feel unworthy of love, or sabotage future opportunities for joy, believing that he doesn't deserve it. This self-punishment can be subtle, manifesting as a pervasive low-level depression, a lack of enthusiasm, or a reluctance to fully engage in life. He might push away affection, not because he doesn't want it, but because he feels he doesn't deserve it. This internal struggle can create a profound emotional barrier, preventing him from fully moving forward, even if his partner has. Moreover, this persistent self-blame can prevent him from learning from his mistakes in a healthy way. Instead of engaging in constructive self-reflection, he becomes trapped in a cycle of self-flagellation. He might struggle to trust his own judgment, fearing he will make the same mistake again. The disturbing truth is that a man's profound difficulty in forgiving himself after hurting someone he loves is a testament to the depth of his emotional investment and his internal moral compass. However, this silent battle with guilt and shame can become a corrosive force, silently undermining his well-being, his capacity for happiness, and his ability to fully participate in future loving relationships, trapping him in a prison of his own making long after the external consequences of his actions have faded. 17. Men interpret nagging as rejection. The dynamic of nagging within a relationship is a common source of friction, often dismissed as a minor annoyance or a communication style issue. However, for many men, being nagging carries a far deeper and more disturbing psychological weight. It's often interpreted not as a request for action, but as a form of rejection, a signal of dissatisfaction, or an implicit message that they are inadequate, incompetent, or unloved. This profound misinterpretation can lead to a vicious cycle of withdrawal and increased nagging, slowly eroding intimacy and trust, precisely because the underlying emotional messages are so drastically misaligned. Consider a partner repeatedly asking a man to complete a chore, to be more attentive, or to change a specific behavior. While the partner's intention might be to improve the relationship, to get needs met, or to simply seek collaboration, the man often perceives it through a very different lens. Each repeated request, each frustrated sigh, each critical tone can chip away at his sense of self-worth. He might hear, "You're not good enough," "You're failing me," or "I'm unhappy with you." This isn't a conscious, logical interpretation, it's an emotional, visceral reaction that bypasses rational thought and goes straight to his core insecurity. This interpretation is deeply rooted in male socialization. Men are often socialized to be problem solvers and providers. Their sense of worth is frequently tied to their ability to be competent, effective, and to meet expectations. When they are nagged, it can feel like a direct challenge to their competence and to their ability to fulfill their role, which can trigger the deep-seated fear of being not enough, as discussed earlier. Furthermore, men often struggle to process and express complex emotions like guilt and shame. Instead of seeking support or talking through their feelings, they might internalize them, allowing the self-blame to fester in isolation. The disturbing aspect is how this misinterpretation can lead to counterproductive behaviors. A man might become overly self-sacrificing, constantly trying to atone for his past actions, even long after the other person has offered forgiveness. He might deny himself happiness, feel unworthy of love, or sabotage future opportunities for joy, believing that he doesn't deserve it. This self-punishment can be subtle, manifesting as a pervasive low-level depression, a lack of enthusiasm, or a reluctance to fully engage in life. He might push away affection, not because he doesn't want it, but because he feels he doesn't deserve it. This internal struggle can create a profound emotional barrier, preventing him from fully moving forward, even if his partner has. Moreover, this persistent self-blame can prevent him from learning from his mistakes in a healthy way. Instead of engaging in constructive self-reflection, he becomes trapped in a cycle of self-flagellation. He might struggle to trust his own judgment, fearing he will make the same mistake again. The disturbing truth is that a man's profound difficulty in forgiving himself after hurting someone he loves is a testament to the depth of his emotional investment and his internal moral compass. However, this silent battle with guilt and shame can become a corrosive force, silently undermining his well-being, his capacity for happiness, and his ability to fully participate in future loving relationships, trapping him in a prison of his own making long after the external consequences of his actions have faded. Moreover, this dynamic can silently erode a man's desire to please or contribute. If his efforts are consistently met with what feels like criticism rather than appreciation, he might stop trying. Why exert effort if the outcome is always perceived failure and rejection? He might conclude that he can't win, and therefore it's safer to disengage. The disturbing truth is that while nagging is often intended as a plea for connection or action, for many men it registers as a profound emotional threat, a relentless assault on their worth and their sense of being loved, leading to a quiet emotional retreat that ultimately damages the very intimacy and connection the nagging partner might have been trying to achieve, leaving both individuals feeling misunderstood, frustrated, and increasingly disconnected. 18. Men fall out of love when they feel disrespected. Love, while a powerful emotion, is not immune to erosion. For men, one of the most potent and often irreversible catalysts for falling out of love is a persistent and profound feeling of disrespect. This isn't about fleeting arguments or occasional disagreements. It's about a sustained pattern of behavior or communication that undermines their sense of worth, competence, or autonomy. When a man feels consistently disrespected by his partner, the very foundation of his love can begin to crumble, leading to an emotional detachment that can be difficult, if not impossible, to reverse. The disturbing truth is that this erosion often occurs silently beneath the surface until the love has quietly withered, leaving a relationship that may appear outwardly functional but is emotionally hollow. Consider a man who experiences his partner consistently belittling his opinions, making sarcastic remarks about his intelligence or abilities, dismissing his feelings, or openly criticizing him in front of others. Each instance, over time, chips away at his self-esteem and his perception of his partner's regard for him. He might interpret these actions as a fundamental lack of appreciation for who he is, a challenge to his value as an individual, or a sign that his partner views him as inferior. This isn't just about bruised ego, it's about a fundamental assault on his dignity and his sense of being seen and valued. When a man feels disrespected, he cannot feel safe, and without safety, deep love struggles to thrive. This strong reaction to disrespect is deeply rooted in male socialization and evolutionary psychology. Men are often conditioned to value respect as a cornerstone of their identity and their place in the social hierarchy. To be disrespected can feel like a profound threat to his status, his competence, and his ability to protect himself and his loved ones. It can also trigger a deep sense of shame and humiliation. For many men, respect is not just a nice-to-have, it's a non-negotiable requirement for feeling secure and capable in a relationship. Without it, the emotional connection begins to feel untenable. The disturbing aspect is how this process of falling out of love due to disrespect often unfolds internally and silently. Men are typically less likely to articulate feelings of disrespect directly, often because it can feel like complaining, or they might fear escalating conflict or being further dismissed. Instead, they internalize the hurt and the perceived slight. The love doesn't vanish overnight. It slowly drains away, replaced by a growing resentment, a sense of resignation, and an emotional detachment. He might continue to go through the motions of the relationship, but his emotional core will have withdrawn. He might stop seeking intimacy, stop sharing vulnerable parts of himself, and stop prioritizing the relationship's emotional health, because the inherent lack of respect has made the emotional investment feel unsafe and unrewarding. Moreover, once a man has fallen out of love due to a sustained feeling of disrespect, it is incredibly difficult to reignite that flame. The damage is often perceived as too deep, the violation too profound. Even if the disrespectful behavior cease, the memory of how he felt and the erosion of his self-worth within that dynamic can linger, making it nearly impossible for him to fully trust or open his heart again in the same way. The disturbing truth is that while passion can fade and challenges can arise, a man's love, when consistently undermined by a profound lack of respect, is often irrevocably damaged, leading to a quiet internal divorce that can precede any physical separation, leaving him emotionally hollowed out and profoundly detached from a relationship that once held his deepest affection. 19. Men overthink more than they admit. Beneath the often stoic, pragmatic, or outwardly confident demeanor of many lies a hidden world of intense rumination and exhaustive analysis. The stereotype of men as straightforward, action-oriented thinkers often obscures a profound psychological truth. Men overthink far more than they are willing to admit, often engaging in complex mental gymnastics about relationships, decisions, career, and personal worth. This isn't just about problem solving, it's about a pervasive tendency to dwell, dissect, and analyze every angle, often to the point of mental exhaustion. The disturbing aspect is that this internal overthinking often goes uncommunicated, leading to misinterpretations of their behavior, emotional isolation, and a silent burden of anxiety that they carry alone. Consider a man who receives a seemingly innocuous text message from his partner or experiences a slight shift in their tone of voice. While he might respond with a casual reply or appear unfazed, his internal world might immediately launch into a flurry of analysis. What did that really mean? Is something wrong? Did I do something? Is she upset? He might replay the conversation, scrutinize past interactions, and try to predict future outcomes, all in an attempt to understand and control potential emotional threats or uncertainty. This isn't a sign of weakness, it's a deeply ingrained pattern of trying to make sense of complex social and emotional cues, particularly in areas where he feels vulnerable or lacks certainty. This tendency to overthink is often rooted in a combination of factors. Men are frequently conditioned to be logical and analytical, to find solutions, and to anticipate problems. This problem-solving mindset, when applied to the ambiguous and often illogical realm of human emotions and relationships, can lead to endless rumination. Without clear data or definitive answers, the male mind can become trapped in a loop of what-if scenarios and attempts to force a logical resolution onto an inherently emotional situation. Furthermore, the pressure to be strong and in control can make men feel compelled to figure things out on their own, rather than seeking external validation or sharing their anxiety. The disturbing aspect is the profound silence surrounding this internal process. Men rarely admit to overthinking, fearing it will make them appear weak, anxious, or overly sensitive. They might worry that sharing their internal struggles will be perceived as a burden or a sign of emotional instability. Consequently, they carry the weight of their ruminations alone. This can lead to emotional exhaustion, difficulty sleeping, and a pervasive sense of anxiety that remains hidden from those closest to them. When a man appears quiet, distant, or withdrawn, it might not be disinterest. It could be that he is deeply engrossed in an internal battle of overthinking, processing a multitude of scenarios and implications that remain unspoken. Moreover, this overthinking can lead to analysis paralysis, where he becomes so bogged down in dissecting every possibility that he struggles to make decisions or take action. He might appear indecisive or hesitant, not because he lacks conviction, but because he's overwhelmed by the sheer volume of internal processing. The disturbing truth is that the male mind, often lauded for its logical prowess, can also be a silent prison of overthinking, where anxieties are magnified, uncertainties are endlessly dissected, and emotional burdens are carried in profound isolation. This hidden world of intense rumination profoundly impacts men's mental well-being and their capacity for genuine connection, as they struggle to bridge the gap between their complex internal lives and their often stoic external presentation, leaving them silently battling a mental landscape far more tumultuous than anyone around them might ever suspect. 20. Men feel heartbreak physically more intensely. While emotional pain is universal, the experience of heartbreak, particularly for men, often manifests with a startling and often overlooked physical intensity. It's not just a metaphorical ache, it's a profound physiological response that can mimic genuine illness, impacting their bodies with a severity that can be both debilitating and deeply disturbing. This isn't to diminish the emotional pain experienced by anyone, but to highlight a specific and often unacknowledged dimension of male suffering during romantic loss. The disturbing truth is that men often endure this intense physical manifestation of heartbreak in silence, further exacerbating their isolation and prolonging their healing process, as their physical symptoms are frequently dismissed or misunderstood as mere emotional distress. Consider a man going through a significant breakup or the loss of a deeply cherished relationship. Beyond the expected emotional turmoil of sadness, anger, or despair, he might experience a profound range of physical symptoms. These can include severe chest pain, often described as a crushing or hollow sensation, intense stomach aches or nausea, loss of appetite leading to rapid weight loss, chronic fatigue, muscle aches, headaches, and even flu-like symptoms. His sleep patterns can be severely disrupted, leading to insomnia or restless nights. His nervous system can go into overdrive, resulting in increased heart rate, anxiety attacks, or a pervasive sense of physical malaise. This isn't hypochondria. It's a genuine somatic response to extreme psychological stress, a phenomenon sometimes referred to as broken heart syndrome or stress cardiomyopathy, where intense emotional stress can literally weaken the heart muscle. This intense physical manifestation is often linked to the way men are socialized to process emotions. Unlike women, who are often encouraged to express and discuss their feelings, men are frequently conditioned to suppress them. When profound emotional pain, like heartbreak, is internalized rather than externalized, it can find an outlet through the body. The body becomes a vessel for the unarticulated emotional turmoil, carrying the burden of the loss in a visceral, tangible way. Furthermore, the loss of a primary emotional connection can trigger a deeply primal sense of abandonment and threat, activating the body's stress response system to an extreme degree. The disturbing aspect is the silence and misunderstanding surrounding this experience. A man suffering from the physical intensity of heartbreak might appear withdrawn, irritable, or simply unwell, without being able to articulate the true source of his physical distress. He might struggle to explain that his chest pain is not a heart attack, but a manifestation of profound grief, or that his nausea is a physical expression of emotional turmoil. Doctors might struggle to find a physiological cause for his symptoms, further frustrating him and making him feel misunderstood. Friends and family might dismiss his physical complaints as just being sad, failing to recognize the profound somatic impact of his emotional pain. This lack of validation can lead to further isolation, as he feels his suffering is not truly seen or acknowledged. Moreover, the combination of intense physical symptoms and emotional suppression can significantly prolong the healing process. Unable to fully process his emotions through verbal expression and physically debilitated by the somatic symptoms, a man can become trapped in a cycle of suffering. The disturbing truth is that while heartbreak is universally painful, for many men, its physical manifestation is a profound and often hidden ordeal, a testament to the deep connection between mind and body, and a poignant reminder of the silent, intense suffering that can accompany male emotional loss, leaving them physically and emotionally ravaged, often without adequate recognition or support for the full scope of their pain. 21. Men secretly want reassurance but rarely ask. Beneath the veneer of independence, self-reliance, and emotional stoicism that men present to the world, there often lies a profound, yet often unacknowledged, craving for reassurance. This isn't about being needy or insecure in a pathological sense. It's a fundamental human desire to feel loved, valued, and secure in their relationships, a desire that men, due to societal conditioning and fear of vulnerability, rarely articulate directly. The disturbing aspect is that this unspoken need for reassurance can lead to a profound emotional disconnect, as men silently yearn for affirmations they dare not request, while partners, unaware of this hidden desire, may unknowingly withhold the very emotional nourishment their man deeply craves, creating a cycle of unspoken needs and unmet expectations. Consider a man who has just started a new job, is facing a difficult challenge, or is simply navigating the everyday uncertainties of life. He might outwardly appear confident and capable, but internally he might be filled with self-doubt, anxiety, and a deep longing for his partner to express belief in him, to affirm his worth, or to simply let him know that he is loved and supported unconditionally. Similarly, in the context of a relationship, he might worry about his partner's feelings, about the stability of their connection, or about his own performance as a partner. He might subtly fish for compliments, seek validation through actions, or become withdrawn if he perceives a lack of affection, all without ever directly asking, "Do you still love me?" or "Am I doing okay?" This reluctance to ask for reassurance is deeply rooted in male socialization. From a young age, boys are taught to be strong, independent, and emotionally resilient. Asking for reassurance can feel like an admission of weakness, a vulnerability that goes against the ingrained masculine ideal. He might fear that openly expressing such a need will make him seem insecure, unattractive, or a burden to his partner. The shame associated with appearing needy is a powerful deterrent, forcing him to suppress these natural human desires and to internalize his anxieties. He might also believe that if his partner truly loved him, they would instinctively know his needs and offer reassurance without being asked, making the act of asking feel like a forced or inauthentic gesture. The disturbing aspect lies in the profound emotional isolation this creates. A man silently craving reassurance, but unwilling or unable to ask for it, carries a hidden emotional burden. He might constantly search for subtle cues of affection or approval, and if he doesn't find them, his anxieties can multiply. This internal struggle can lead to him becoming distant, irritable, or even testing his partner, not out of malice, but out of a desperate, unconscious attempt to elicit the very reassurance he longs for. His partner, unaware of this unspoken need, might interpret his behaviors as a lack of interest, further exacerbating the emotional distance and misunderstanding. Moreover, the absence of direct requests for reassurance can create a dangerous feedback loop. If a man never asks, his partner may assume he doesn't need it, or that he is truly as self-sufficient as he appears. This lack of verbal affirmation can then reinforce his belief that he is not truly valued or loved, further deepening his internal craving and his reluctance to express it. The disturbing truth is that a man's secret yearning for reassurance, while a universal human need, is often trapped behind a formidable wall of societal expectation and fear of vulnerability. This silent struggle leads to a profound emotional gap, leaving men feeling unloved and insecure, even in deeply caring relationships, simply because the language of reassurance remains unspoken, creating a persistent, unfulfilled longing that silently erodes his emotional well-being and the very intimacy he desires. 22. Men become emotionally distant when tired. The human body and mind are intricately connected, and for men, the impact of physical and mental exhaustion can manifest in a particularly disturbing way, a pronounced emotional distancing. It's not a conscious choice to withdraw affection or connection. Rather, it's a physiological and psychological shutdown, a protective mechanism triggered by depleted energy reserves. When a man is profoundly tired, his capacity for emotional engagement, empathy, and vulnerability significantly diminishes, leading to a state of emotional aloofness that can be deeply perplexing and hurtful to his partner. The disturbing truth is that this distance is often misinterpreted as a lack of caring or interest, when in reality, it's a symptom of overwhelming fatigue, creating a cycle of misunderstanding that can strain even the strongest relationships. Consider a man who has endured a demanding workday, struggled with sleep deprivation, or is experiencing a period of intense stress. As his physical and mental energy wane, his emotional bandwidth shrinks dramatically. He might come home, sit in silence, offer monosyllabic responses, or appear utterly disengaged. His ability to listen actively, to offer comfort, to engage in meaningful conversation, or to express affection becomes severely impaired. It's as if a protective barrier descends, shielding his depleted self from any further emotional demands. He might genuinely love his partner, but in that moment of profound exhaustion, his emotional resources are simply too low to access and express that love in a way that feels connecting. This phenomenon is often rooted in the male brain's processing of stress and emotion. When under duress or extreme fatigue, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for higher-level emotional regulation and complex social interaction, can become less active. The brain shifts into a more primitive, survival-oriented mode, prioritizing rest and conservation of energy over emotional engagement. For men, who are often less practiced in emotional articulation to begin with, this physiological shutdown can make any attempt at emotional connection feel like an insurmountable task. He might perceive emotional demands as an additional burden, leading him to withdraw further as a means of self-preservation. The disturbing aspect is the profound impact this emotional distance has on relationships and how it's often misinterpreted. A partner, seeing their man become quiet, unresponsive, or seemingly uncaring, might feel rejected, unloved, or that something is deeply wrong with the relationship. They might try harder to engage him, inadvertently increasing the perceived emotional demand and causing him to retreat further. This creates a vicious cycle where the partner feels neglected and the man feels overwhelmed, leading to growing resentment and distance on both sides. He's not intentionally being hurtful, he's simply running on empty, and his emotional capacity has temporarily shut down. Moreover, men rarely articulate that their emotional distance is a direct result of fatigue. To admit such a thing might feel like an excuse or an admission of weakness, going against the ingrained masculine ideal of constant strength and resilience. So he suffers in silence, creating an invisible wall between himself and his partner. The disturbing truth is that a man's emotional availability is often directly correlated with his energy levels, and when those levels are critically low, his capacity for connection can plummet, leading to a distressing emotional withdrawal that, when misunderstood, can silently erode the intimacy and understanding in a relationship, leaving both partners feeling frustrated, confused, and increasingly isolated in their emotional worlds. 23. Men fear repeating past relationship failures. The echoes of past mistakes, particularly in the realm of romantic relationships, can cast a long and unsettling shadow over a man's future emotional landscape. For many men, the fear of repeating past relationship failures is a pervasive and deeply disturbing anxiety that profoundly influences their approach to new connections, their willingness to commit, and their capacity for vulnerability. This isn't just about learning from experience, it's about a deep-seated dread of reliving past pain, of making the same errors, and of ultimately experiencing the same heartbreak or disappointment. The disturbing truth is that this fear, while born of a desire for self-preservation, can paradoxically lead to self-sabotage, emotional guardedness, and an inability to fully embrace new opportunities for love, trapping them in a cycle of cautious detachment. Consider a man who has experienced a significant relationship failure, a painful breakup, a betrayal, or a long-term partnership that ended in bitterness. He might have been hurt, or he might have been the one who caused the pain. Regardless of the specifics, the memory of that failure becomes a powerful deterrent. In subsequent relationships, he might become hyper-vigilant, constantly looking for red flags, scrutinizing his own behavior, and analyzing his partner's actions through the lens of past mistakes. If he was cheated on, he might become overly suspicious. If he was emotionally unavailable, he might try to force himself to be more open, often awkwardly and inauthentically. If he felt suffocated, he might guard his independence with extreme caution. This fear is deeply rooted in the male psychological drive for competence and success. Relationship failure, for many men, can feel like a profound personal failure, a blow to their self-esteem and their ability to navigate one of life's most important domains. The desire to avoid such a perceived failure again can become an overwhelming motivator. Furthermore, men often internalize their emotional pain and process it in isolation. This means that past hurts are not always fully resolved or integrated, but rather stored as raw, unhealed wounds that resurface as fear in new situations. The disturbing aspect is how this fear can lead to self-sabotaging behaviors. A man terrified of repeating a past mistake might unconsciously create the very outcome he fears. For example, if he fears being hurt, he might push a new partner away before they can get too close. If he fears commitment due to a past failed marriage, he might shy away from taking the next step, even with a partner he deeply loves. This isn't a conscious desire to destroy a good thing. It's an unconscious protective mechanism running on overdrive, attempting to avert perceived future pain by preventing deep emotional investment. This can manifest as an inability to fully commit, a tendency to withdraw when things get serious, or a constant search for flaws that justify ending a potentially healthy relationship. Moreover, this fear can make a man overly cautious and emotionally guarded, preventing him from fully experiencing the joy and vulnerability of a new connection. He might hold a part of himself back, always keeping one foot out the door, just in case. This emotional reserve can be misinterpreted by partners as a lack of interest or a reluctance to truly invest, leading to frustration and a breakdown in intimacy. The disturbing truth is that a man's profound fear of repeating past relationship failures, while a natural human response to pain, can become a silent, insidious force that prevents him from fully embracing new opportunities for love, trapping him in a cycle of cautious detachment and self-protection, ultimately limiting his capacity for genuine happiness and fulfillment in the very area of life where he most yearns for connection. 24. Men crave emotional leadership from partners. While often portrayed as the stoic, emotionally self-sufficient gender, many men harbor a profound, yet rarely articulated, craving for emotional leadership from their partners. This isn't about abdicating responsibility for their own emotions. It's about a deep desire for a partner who can skillfully navigate complex emotional landscapes, provide a safe space for vulnerability, and gently guide them towards deeper emotional expression and connection. The disturbing aspect is that this craving often goes unspoken, leaving men feeling emotionally adrift and partners unaware of the profound impact they could have by stepping into this role, leading to missed opportunities for deeper intimacy and a silent struggle for emotional connection. Consider a man who struggles to articulate his feelings, who has been conditioned to suppress vulnerability, or who simply lacks the emotional vocabulary to express his inner world. He might deeply yearn for intimacy, for a partner who can help him bridge the gap between his internal emotional experience and external expression. He craves a partner who can gently probe, who can ask the right questions, who can create an atmosphere where it feels safe to be emotionally raw without judgment or criticism. He needs someone who can identify his unspoken needs, validate his feelings, and model healthy emotional communication, effectively taking the lead in navigating the often uncharted territory of emotional depth. This craving for emotional leadership is often rooted in male socialization. Many men grow up without adequate emotional education or role models for healthy emotional expression. They are taught to be strong, stoic, and rational, often at the expense of developing emotional literacy. Consequently, when they enter adult relationships, they can feel ill-equipped to handle the complexities of emotional intimacy. They might genuinely want to connect on a deeper level, but lack the tools or the confidence to initiate or sustain such conversations. A partner who can provide this emotional scaffolding becomes incredibly valuable, not just as a lover, but as a guide and a teacher in the realm of feelings. The disturbing aspect is the profound silence surrounding this need. Men rarely, if ever, explicitly ask for emotional leadership. To do so would feel like an admission of weakness, a failure to be emotionally competent, or a burden on their partner. Instead, they might subtly signal their need through withdrawal, frustration, or a passive resistance to emotional conversations, hoping their partner will intuitively step up. This unspoken yearning creates a significant emotional gap. Partners might perceive his emotional struggles as a lack of interest or an unwillingness to engage, rather than a silent plea for guidance and support in an area where he feels profoundly unskilled. Moreover, when a partner does provide this emotional leadership by creating safe spaces, modeling vulnerability, gently encouraging expression, and validating his feelings, the impact on a man can be transformative. He can begin to explore his own emotional landscape with greater confidence, leading to deeper intimacy and a more fulfilling relationship. Conversely, the absence of this leadership can leave him feeling emotionally isolated, stuck in his own internal world, and unable to break free from old patterns of emotional suppression. The disturbing truth is that men silently yearn for a partner who can serve as an emotional compass, guiding them towards a deeper understanding of themselves and fostering a level of intimacy they struggle to achieve on their own. This unaddressed craving highlights a profound vulnerability and a hidden desire for connection that, when unaddressed, can leave both partners feeling frustrated and emotionally unfulfilled, missing out on the transformative power of shared emotional growth. 25. Men often love deeply but express it poorly. The final disturbing psychological fact we explore today encapsulates much of what we've discussed. Men often possess a profound capacity for deep, unwavering love, but struggle immensely with its articulate and consistent expression. This isn't a deficit of feeling, it's a deficit of fluency, a disconnect between the depth of their internal emotional experience and their external communication. The love is undeniably there, often fierce, loyal, and all-encompassing, yet it frequently manifests in ways that are misunderstood, overlooked, or simply not recognized as love by their partners. The disturbing truth is that this expressive gap leads to a profound sense of emotional frustration on both sides, leaving men feeling unappreciated for their genuine affection, and partners feeling unloved or uncertain of the depth of their man's commitment, creating a silent tragedy of unspoken and unreceived love. Consider a man whose heart swells with affection for his partner. He might feel an overwhelming sense of protectiveness, a deep appreciation for their presence, and a profound commitment to their shared future. Yet, when prompted to express these feelings, he might stumble, offer a terse "I love you," or resort to practical actions rather than effusive words. He might show his love by working tirelessly to provide, by fixing things around the house, by offering practical advice, by remembering small details about her preferences, or by simply being a reliable, steady presence. In his mind, these actions are his love language, his way of demonstrating the depth of his affection and commitment. He believes his actions should speak for themselves, often unaware that his partner might be yearning for more verbal or emotionally explicit affirmations. This expressive challenge is deeply rooted in male socialization and neurological differences. From childhood, boys are often discouraged from overtly expressing soft emotions. They learn that emotional restraint is a sign of strength, while vulnerability is a weakness. This conditioning can lead to a limited emotional vocabulary and a discomfort with articulating deep feelings. Furthermore, some neurological research suggests differences in how men and women process and express emotions, with men sometimes relying more on action-oriented rather than verbally expressive communication. This isn't a flaw, it's a difference in wiring and learned behavior. He might genuinely not know how to express the complex symphony of his feelings in a way that resonates with his partner's needs. The disturbing aspect lies in the profound misunderstanding and emotional distance this creates. A partner, seeing a lack of verbal affection, emotional vulnerability, or grand gestures, might genuinely question the depth of her man's love. She might feel unloved, neglected, or that he simply doesn't care as much as she does. This can lead to nagging, as discussed earlier, frustration, or a gradual emotional withdrawal as she feels her emotional needs are unmet. Meanwhile, the man, loving deeply but expressing it poorly, feels increasingly misunderstood and unappreciated. He might think, "Why doesn't she see how much I do for her? Why doesn't she understand my love?" This creates a painful cycle where both individuals feel unfulfilled and unacknowledged, despite the presence of genuine affection. Moreover, this expressive gap can lead to a man feeling emotionally isolated. He carries the weight of his deep feelings internally, unable to fully share them in a way that feels authentic or understood. This can lead to a sense of loneliness within the relationship, as he struggles to bridge the chasm between his inner world of profound love and his outer world of limited expression. The disturbing truth is that a man's deep love, when poorly expressed, is a silent tragedy. It's a love that, despite its immense power and sincerity, often unrecognized, unappreciated, and ultimately unreceived in the way it yearns to be. This highlights a critical need for both men to develop their emotional literacy and for partners to learn to read the diverse and often subtle ways in which male love is truly expressed, to avoid the heartbreaking consequence of a deep love that remains perpetually unseen and unheard. As we conclude this exploration into the disturbing psychological facts about male psychology, it becomes clear that the male inner world is far more intricate, vulnerable, and often burdened than superficial observations might suggest. From the silent comparisons to past loves, to the profound fear of being not enough, to the physical intensity of heartbreak and the deep, often unarticulated love that struggles for expression, men navigate a landscape filled with silent battles, unspoken fears, and profound emotional complexities. These aren't weaknesses. They are fundamental aspects of the human condition, amplified and shaped by unique societal pressures, biological predispositions, and personal histories. Understanding these truths isn't about excusing behavior, but about fostering empathy, encouraging deeper communication, and challenging the rigid stereotypes that often prevent men from fully embracing their emotional selves and prevent others from truly seeing them. The journey towards genuine connection requires us all to look beyond the surface, to listen not just to words, but to the unspoken narratives, to acknowledge the hidden struggles, and to cultivate a space where vulnerability is met with acceptance, not judgment. Only then can we truly bridge the gaps, heal the wounds, and foster relationships built on authentic understanding and profound respect for the complex, beautiful, and often disturbing realities of the male psyche. Thank you for joining us on this illuminating and hopefully transformative journey.